Closing out 2022 with the profits. Trust the Profits here, closing out 2022 in style. All four of us here come to talk about some of our favorite moments, some of our most memorable moments, some of the most memorable moments in horse racing in 2022. We've got Matt DeSantis, Colin Sheen, El Hombre, and myself, the Formula. And before we jump into this, El Hombre, we started this, in 2019, before the pandemic hit, started Trust the Profits just as an idea for us to sort of put something around trying to break horse racing in a good way, trying to figure out mathematically, formulaically, through some sort of math and models, how best to predict horse racing. And then it spun up into this, right? It spun up into podcasts. We've got a couple great guys with us now today. What's been your feeling over the past couple of years on Trust the Profits?
Yeah, like you said, we were originally trying to break the code to get rich. Tongue in cheek, obviously, but
yeah.
Once we started doing we started with just audio podcasting, and that quickly spun into YouTube once like StreamYard and everything became so accessible. So and then we started making a bunch of friends, and a few of those friends had some pretty good angles and ability to do some of these shows with us. So now we're four deep. Plus we have plenty of guests that come on to all of our shows weekly. So thanks to all those guests and everybody that's helped us grow to, I don't know, I think we're 7,400 subscribers today. So
as of today,
thanks everybody.
That's about where we're at. The mission has always been for us to continually improve in our predictions of horse racing, right? And getting there, chasing perfection, knowing that perfection will never be attainable, right? All that together, I think we're still charging forward on that mission. I'm still doing my stuff with the model on the side, but we've got a whole bunch of other brains in here picking at it from all different perspectives. So thank you guys for joining us. And I do want to wrap this up and say we're here to talk about the past year, 2022. We got a couple different topics. Matt, Colin, didn't mean to exclude you guys. How are you guys doing today? Start with Matt.
Yeah, doing well. Just thrilled to be a part of the Trust the Profits team. It's been so much fun coming on right around, a little bit before the Breeders' Cup, and really excited for everything that we have planned in 2023. And just thank you to all the subscribers and viewers and people who comment and engage with us either on YouTube or on Twitter. It's just been great.
Yeah, it's been great to have you both. Colin, words from you.
You started to try and break the code, and you ended up with me on your channel. I think you're going the wrong way. So we might reevaluate things.
We have seen a regression. We've seen a slight regression. No,
this code's not working. Let's try Colin. He'll make us look smart. But it's been a ton of fun. I'll be back with the big board coming up with the Derby. That was kind of what you guys found me on, and I'm really excited about what we have planned for next year, because it's unbelievable when you put four minds together. Thinking about the same thing, because for a while I was doing this, kind of on my own behind the scenes. And when you find people that are, thinking about the same thing, the creative juices have been flowing in our chat, and I'm really excited for the viewers and to work on that stuff with you guys. So thanks so much for having me join you.
Yeah. And don't sell yourself short, Colin. As much as we all joke around about being right or wrong on our predictions, even when you're wrong, sometimes there's a lot to learn from what each of us can say or listen to from anybody, because sometimes even if you're partially right, you can use that down the road for something else. I learned a ton, Matt, for example, on a lot of the turf stuff going into the Breeders' Cup, just listening to a lot of his knowledge on turf racing and Euro racing, and I think Japanese racing, which we'll get into more next year. I feel like
Swedish.
Swedish harness
racing on Christmas Day. Some of us have problems, some of us don't. It's all right. We don't have to rub it in.
We're gonna maybe take a slight left turn into 2023 for some Swedish winter harness racing.
We're going global.
Maybe a new channel even for just that topic.
Maybe. I'll have to learn Swedish next. And like you said, learning every day. I don't think there's been a day or a week that's gone by that I haven't learned or thought a new way about something, even if it's just a little minor tweak, right? There's always something to be learned. But
I learned how to dress better. I learned how to dress better on this channel.
I gotta start sending caps to everybody, caps and ties for the whole crew.
I can only wear derby hats, dude. I can't pull off that look.
Let's go ahead and start with some of the best of topics that we've organized. Thank you, Matt, for getting that kicked off. The first topic that we have here is best race, whatever that means to you, best race. El Hombre, do you want to go ahead and start? What was your best race of the year? What did you think was the best race and why?
Well, we all entered these in on a shared sheet. So you guys had your answers in before me, but me and Matt are going to agree on this one. So we can both talk about this. But the Breeders' Cup Distaff this year was incredible. First off, it was 4 very bettable horses that were pretty balanced in the money they took.
Yeah.
Malathot got there at the end, closed on the outside, and it was such a great race. It was so competitive. And it was basically Nest, I believe, went off as the post-time favorite. And me and Matt had talked at length about how Nest probably wasn't going to win that race and that the other 3 involved in the money would be ahead of Nest. And that's exactly how it went. So that was my best race for a couple of reasons. Number one, I was right. We were right as a group for the most part on that Malathot would get there and talk about like the biggest, scary moment as far as betting goes and the results of a race went. That race had it all for me because I was not sure. I had a lot of money wrapped up. I had a mutual fund with other players that had invested in bets with me, and I was responsible for that. And I had a lot of money wrapped into that race and that result. And when they crossed the line, I had no idea whether I'd won or not because it was that close.
That race was the pivot point of your whole day for BC. I remember. I remember you showing me what your whole plan was, and then boom, once it hits the distaff.
That was that made my Saturday start, or my Saturday took off really well from there.
Yeah.
But Friday I did really well too. I had a great Breeders' Cup. Thanks again to Matt for a lot of the turf stuff, and then me and Colin had worked on some of the other stuff. Colin didn't end up listening to me enough, but that's another topic. But Matt, since you had the same answer,
I was going to say,
you want to just go ahead and follow up with what I said?
Yeah, just I thought it was the most thrilling, actually, and certainly the most hotly contested, and I think the most instantly classic of all the Breeders' Cup races. I know you guys will talk maybe a little bit more about another Breeders' Cup race that might go down in history as well, but it was one of those races where, especially Malathot and Clairiere, who have just been slugging it out for the last year and a half, 2 years against each other. And, once one of them gets an advantage, the other one comes back and then the other one counterpunches. And it's just been this great rivalry in the distaff division. And to see the two of them, inches apart, and then Blue Stripe just running the race of her life, hitting second, and just a 3-way photo, basically, which you rarely ever see at the Breeders' Cup. So it's just a really thrilling race. And the really cool part was even Secret Oath was kind of in it, because Secret Oath actually came off the turn in the lead. And I remember the call was, kind of this shock that, oh my God, Secret Oath is taking us into the home stretch, and, had made that early move. And so it was just, like I said, had everything that you needed. It was these fillies and mares that we've been following for a year plus in the case of Nest. And so it's just, like I said, really thrilling race, exciting. And I knew El Hombre was leveraged to the hilt in that one. And so I was glad he got the head bob with Malathot.
Right.
And I believe we have some live footage of me actually, as soon as they posted the winner finally. That was my live reaction there. So
it's funny, you have footage. I have footage from a different camera. It looked more like this to me. That's what I remember seeing.
All right.
You're not, and Colin, you and I were calling that. I remember calling that from my car in a parking lot. Thoughts on that race at all? I know that wasn't your pick, but I remember you and I were pretty excited about that and excited about the outcome.
Awesome race.
Yeah, watching it live, right? Anytime you get a finish like that, it's going to stick out in your mind, right? Regardless of what it was. And then you add in the story of it being one of the most important races of Breeders' Cup weekend, only elevates it to that next level, right? This wasn't the 5th race on Friday. Right. This was the distaff. That's
basically the female classic, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So to get that finish is certainly very exciting. I went elsewhere. Not to be confused with the Breeders' Cup, the Breeders' Futurity in October. And this was, I'll tell you a little funny story. The day before the Breeders' Futurity, I have my good man Sammy P over at Nesson, who's our betting expert. And I went over to him and I said, hey, the Derby winner is racing tomorrow. His name is Loggins. and he's running in race
We couldn't
9.
get in. We're 10 minutes in.
He's running in race 9, right? And I said, you got to keep an eye on this horse. So he bets this horse, right? Now, this horse came off of an 8-length win in September at Churchill Downs. And for some reason, the bullet workouts, everything stood out to me. And so I put on this race, and they go 22:46. And Loggins is right on the top of this pace. And I said, oh, I'm in trouble. It was a good effort. Yeah. When you see 46 for a 2-year-old second time out, you're thinking there's no way this horse is holding on. And sure enough, here comes Forte on the outside of Loggins. They hit the stretch. The announcer makes a big noise about Forte passing him. And I went, well, he had a good effort. Loggins comes back and passes him around the 8th or 16th pole. And I nearly jumped through the roof of my house. And then they two battled out down to the finish line. So to me, that was just, Loggins lost. You guys are taking the easy road when you pick the race you win, right? I get a lot more that I lose. That
was a good one.
Great race. Yeah.
It's easier for me to come from. But however, I want one more thing here. Remember last year, the Kentucky Jockey Club was the key race, correct? Mm-hmm. And I tweeted this out today because if you go back and look at that Breeders' Futurity field, 5 horses in that field have come back to win. Forte came back to win the Breeders' Cup, Juvenile. Mm-hmm. Powerful, Instant Coffee just won. 2 Phils won. Fantastic again won. Loggins hasn't raced yet. Yeah. And 2 of those horses came in second. That was Carmel Road and Newgate. So that's 7 horses right there that have come back to run big. And I'm a little concerned we haven't seen Loggins yet. He thought you'd see him. They were pretty quick to say he's not in the Breeders' Cup. It was 3 weeks later. He was tired. Then he skipped the Kentucky Jockey Club. So I'm waiting to see. I haven't seen him work out yet, but I've got my 2023 Horse of the Year already in Loggins. And that race really was, it was so exciting. It was such an exciting race.
Absolutely.
How about
here's actually some live footage from Colin's reaction of the Loggins finish.
No way.
So moving along.
Yeah, my race. I'm going to jump out there. Just toss the obvious one on the fire here, which is the Breeders' Cup Classic. Everything that built up to it, everybody talking about Flightline, everybody trying to pick away at Flightline and figure out if there was a way that Flightline would lose. Does Life is Good have a chance, right? And just the buildup of that race, knowing that it was going to be, I look back to the Mike Tyson fights of the, 1989 when anyone would get in the ring with them, with Mike Tyson, and you knew that it was just going to be a bloodbath until, of course, Buster Douglas. So you're waiting to see if Flightline would have the Buster Douglas moment. And sure enough, Flightline rose to the occasion, winning by, I think, like 15 or 16 lengths in that race. Just everything built up to it, knowing that it was the biggest race of the year. I went with the Breeders' Cup Classic.
Yeah, no, I will say I was lucky enough to be there in person, and I know people talk about how loud it was when Faro came into the home stretch at the Belmont. That was the loudest I've ever heard a track when Flightline came into the stretch, and people were just so excited for this horse. It's just like people. You're absolutely right, Tom. He rose to the occasion.
Yeah,
and I'll be honest, an honorable mention that I'll just throw out there is the first live reaction Colin and I did together. The Pacific Classic was also good. Really high up there for me. Colin and I just decided to hop on and do this Pacific Classic together. Little did we know we'd see him win by like 20 lengths that day.
I remember because we were texting and you guys were like, yeah, we could do it. And I'm like, I can't do it because I had something else going on that day. And
right.
it worked out because it was like, that was when Flightline really answered.
Yeah, because it was
he's beaten some real horses.
Yeah, it was the 2-turn experiment, and it was just so dominant.
If you haven't watched that race, your guys' replay reaction was great too. Go watch that race again if you didn't see it for some reason, or if you just want to revisit that Pacific Classic. That was incredible. That was probably even more impressive than the Classic, just based on the fact that it was embarrassing, even more embarrassing than the Classic for the rest of the field.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, he was so pressured. There was so much expectation that it was like, even if he wins by 10 lengths, it won't be anything spectacular. And then he went out there and just buried him even worse.
Yeah.
And Life is Good had the best that Life is Good had in him.
Right.
And everybody said too, and this is the truth, Life is Good could have went out and won the mile. The Breeders, he could have been a Breeders' Cup champion again. Easily this year, and he chose to go in the Classic, and he did exactly what he was supposed to do, which was set a ridiculous pace that he couldn't keep up. And everybody wondered if Flightline could do it, and he did.
He went on the offensive, right? I think that was their plan. Go on the offensive and just see if you can tire out Flightline. But any of us who have seen Flightline run realize that horse doesn't really get tired, right?
No.
Moving on, the next category we have, best biggest moments / stories. So it might not be a specific race that you thought was an amazing race, but just some sort of storyline or some sort of moment that you remember that is something special for you in 2022. Colin, let's go ahead and start with you.
Yeah, and I don't go here. This is the hot oven item that I don't touch ever. But Matt touched this topic a couple weeks ago on his Win Play show, and I figured I have to go in here and just mention Heisa and the Baffert suspension at Churchill. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I was out talking to my neighbor across the street last week, and he said, "Oh, what do you do?" And I said, "I'm going in to tape one of my horse racing shows." And he said, "Oh, my brother's a huge fan of horse racing." He goes, "But they're all fixed and they're all on drugs, aren't they?" And you got to realize that this person, my neighbor, doesn't follow horse racing, and this is the perception that they walk into it with. And he 100%. Followed that up with saying, "I went to Saratoga with my brother, and we were like 2 feet away from this jockey named Casta something." I'm like, "Oh, Castellano." He's like, "Yeah, that's it." And we talked, and he gave my nephew the goggles, and you could see the excitement of the moment of him going to the track was very similar to what Matt just said with the stretch of Flightline and the energy that is there. But people are not going to come into the sport because of his first comment and his first feeling of what horse racing is. And so the biggest story, although they haven't gotten it right, although there's been complaints about it. And like I said, I leave it to, don't tell me what medicine it is. I'm not going to look it up, and don't tell me what rules is going through the Senate because, but we need to get this right now. And I work in sports, and I work in close with advertising. The money is pouring in for sports betting. The states are all passing it. We should be 15 steps ahead of everybody else, and we're suddenly really close to being not only behind, we're close to falling off the map. And so his sobering comment made me realize, wow, people are missing out on what this could be. And that's what I try to bring on my shows. It's what I try to bring to this channel is to new people. It's an easy game to play. That's why I focus on daily doubles, and you could have so much fun with it.
Yeah.
But we're going to get passed by if people can't get their SHIT together and make it right. Let's get a national, organization where everyone's playing by the same rules. And when Baffert comes back and wins in 2 years, the guys that are walking down the hall at my work are going to go, "Oh, the guy that cheats won again. Why is he back?" And I'm going to say, "I don't know." And I'm going to shake my head again. Yeah. And I really don't want to be there. And I want people to be playing this game like all the fun that we have with it. So I'm off my soapbox. That's all I'll say about it. But I think
soapbox to be on.
It's such an important story that we need to at least bring attention to it.
Yeah. Well, I went off of when we first started, probably 6 months into the Profit, so probably 2 years ago or something. I was going hard on the Baffert stuff. Like I was really, and I'm just not the type of person that's going to get in a computer tough guy. "Oh, you're wrong. You're an effing idiot. F you, back and forth on Twitter." I'm not doing that. I don't have time for it. Nobody else should have time for it either. But anyway, I'm passionate about the same thing, Colin, because you're right. I've talked to your neighbor. I've talked to that guy 100 times.
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, it's all fixed and blah blah blah, and how do you trust any of these racetracks and all that stuff?" And you're right. There is no good answer because like Baffert, who's the face of horse racing, whether we like it or not, he still is to the fringe fans.
Yeah.
Everybody knows the old rich guy with the aviator sunglasses, the blue aviators.
Yeah.
Who's that old rich guy with the blue aviators with the silver hair?
With the white hair, yeah.
Yeah. That's what everybody, they all know his face and some know his name or whatever else.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is he's one of the best of all time. And there is a lot of black clouds hovering over, and it's not just him. There's most of the trainers have been in some kind of, most of the big trainers have been in some kind of turmoil at some point. You heard, Asmussen and there's always rumors on Brad Cox and all the great ones. So, I mean, it is something that needs to be addressed. I don't know how to approach it. I think just talking about it like this helps.
Because part of it is communication.
The honor of the people who are legit.
And part of it's marketing and communication from one central organization who's just mystifying. It's not all like that, right? And I think that's what the problem is. And people aren't going to spend their money in a sport where they think they're getting screwed over.
And also coming down with some sort of common governing body, like you said. If we're going to have horse racing in the U.S. and we've got all these different regions, right? If someone gets dinged for something in Santa Anita, right, you don't have one governing body over there punishing for their local, right?
The Baffert Yak Teen thing was like a punchline.
Yeah. Oh, we're gonna see it again this year because the suspension
punchline
is going on.
Seriously, it's bad for the game. I'm glad you pointed it out, Colin. Even though it is a depressing thing to talk about,
and that's why I will. I'll try to bring us back because my biggest story was there were kind of two stories that stuck out to me was Rated R Superstar and Tyler's Tribe. Those were two stories that I really loved. Rated R Superstar, who just won a listed stakes race at Remington Park 2 weeks away from his 10th birthday. Absolutely awesome. Incredible. Like winning stakes races for all of us old guys out there. And I love that horse. I have a connection to the name because as you guys know, my dad had an independent professional wrestling organization for a long time. And the gentleman who is the Rated R Superstar Edge in the WWE wrestled for my dad under the name of Sexton Hardcastle for a number of years before he made it big in the WWE as Edge. And so, so I because
dead
of
pet
that,
alarm for those
and so
those because of that, it's the dead pet alarm.
It is, but I love Rated R Superstar for that reason. I just think he's a cool horse. He's the type of horse that you root for. He's the type of horse that makes horse racing great too. And Tyler's Tribe was just this great story early in the year, obviously named after a very ill child who is actually who cancer treatments have been going well. And it seems like was able to spend Christmas with his family, which was really great to see. But this kind of freak of a 2-year-old who was just beating everybody by just running them off their feet at Prairie Meadows out in Iowa.
Double-digit lengths and 6 furlong races.
Exactly. Yeah. It was just great. And I just love Tyler's Tribe. It didn't work out at the Breeders' Cup class, or Breeders' Cup, I should say, because the way the Breeders' Cup is structured, he kind of had to choose either running in the juvenile or running on turf. And he's not a turf horse and he's not a routing horse. And so as a juvenile, you're kind of stuck into picking one or the other. But those are two just great feel-good stories. Obviously, Cody's Wish in there as well is just like an absolute tearjerker because I remember fading that horse in terms of his chance. And then I watched the Human Interest story afterwards, and I felt like the biggest jerk in the world for fading this horse because I was like, I am crying watching this story about this child. And now I'm like, oh, I feel really bad for not picking Cody's Wish to win this. And of course, then he wins. And it was just a truly amazing story at the Breeders' Cup as well.
El Hombre, I think you and I have the same answer on this. I'll let you.
Yeah. It was Rich Strike, man. I mean, that was obviously the biggest story in racing for as far as mainstream media goes and all that, and for good reason. I mean, it was 83 to 1 or whatever the odds were. Just nuts. Horse didn't even make the field really.
No,
got backed in due to a disc or another horse pulling out at the last minute. I remember the shows we did in covering the Derby, and I'm proud to say this, we never picked against Rich Strike because he wasn't even in the field when we did our shows. We can proudly say we didn't tell anybody not to bet Rich Strike.
I think it was like about 24 hours between when the race went and when he was actually put into the field, right?
Yeah, and amazingly, not on any of the Kentucky Derby paraphernalia. People who bought T-shirts or people who bought the mugs, all of that stuff was printed ahead of time, and the winner of the Kentucky Derby is not on any of that. So
that's why he wore number 21, and that's just a crazy story.
For a horse who just previously came in third in his prep race at Turfway Park.
Yeah, right? On the synth. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Who would
exactly. Just an
that was
insane
a wild, insane story. We've all beat it to death all year, so I don't really feel the need to beat it too much further. But Tom, you have anything else? We both said Rich Strike on that.
Yeah, so. I got nothing else to add, only because if you talk to anyone about horse racing at all, the thing that they'll bring up, if they're outside of the circle, let's say, is going to be Rich Strike, or what about that horse that everybody
was? I just went to a Christmas party a few days ago, and they were like, and they were like, "What was that horse that won it this year? That horse that was so crazy." And I was like, "Rich Strike,
Right.
yeah, Rich Strike." They couldn't remember the name.
If I tell
but they
people about
remembered
our
the 80 to
YouTube,
1.
right? If I tell people about our YouTube channel here, Trust the Prophets, the first thing they'll ask me, "Did you call Rich Strike? Did you get that
Yeah.
one right? Did you get the Derby right?"
The only person I
was-
heard even mention Rich Strike was Dennis Trusty, and it was before he was in the field. This was like 2 weeks before. He's like, "I can't really say because I don't know if my horse is going to make the field." I'm like, "Well, who's your horse?" And he did say Rich Strike. I'll give Dennis
Yeah,
the one as much shit as I give Dennis. I'll give him that.
yeah.
So there
Rich
you go,
Strike-
Dennis.
Rich Strike was interesting for me because we talk about learning, right?
Mm.
And I added in an element to my model where I do pull in specific length differences. So, like if you're at a certain point in a race, how many lengths you make up. And when I redid the Kentucky Derby, I noticed that Rich Strike scored a 7 on that, which is extremely high because this number can go into negatives, right? So usually I consider a horse that is potentially a closer scoring like a 2, 3, 4, something like that. But Rich Strike got a 7 going into the Derby based on the PP. So Rich Strike, I learned lessons from watching Rich Strike. Let me put it that way.
But that horse, I can never recall the name of the horse in the Derby that went out there and set that torrid
Summer
pace.
is tomorrow.
Thank you.
Summer's tomorrow from Japan.
Yeah, Summer is tomorrow. That's what makes the
That,
Derby
that's
so
the
great.
horse that
is-
set it up perfect for Rich Strike. That
Yes.
the horse was going
and
crazy.
the fact that what also set it up was Summer's tomorrow, but what also set it up was that every other horse wanted to be right on the lead. They all
Yeah.
wanted to stalk. And so it
Yeah,
wasn't
burned 'em.
just that Summer's tomorrow went obscenely fast. It was that everybody else was like, yeah, we got to keep up. And that was just, I mean, when they were shouting out the fractions, I mean, Colin, you were talking about the Breeders' Futurity fractions. I mean, when they were calling out the Derby fractions, I was
Yeah.
like, holy hell, this is
Yeah.
something to
This
see.
is going
what
to
we're-
end weird. Yeah, and then you
Yeah,
saw
exactly.
everybody
It got
except
real weird.
Epicenter hung in.
But it was
tough, like
chalky to some extent. You're right. You know, it was Epicenter and Zandon who were the two kind of favorites there battling out at the
Yep.
end until
And
Rich
then
Strike snuck up
simplification
the rail.
fourth.
Well, that's a nice transition to the next topic, perhaps.
It
Matt's-
is. It is.
blood brother.
Okay. Let's jump into it then, Matt. I think we gave you the perfect segue there.
Yeah.
The next one is favorite horse of
Yeah.
2022.
So I have a son. I may be fatherless in terms of actual children, but my son is simplification. And I just, you know, there's horses that you just watch and you go, I think that's my guy. That's my horse. And he broke his maiden. I remember he broke his maiden about a week before the Breeders' Cup last year. And he broke it he posted it out in 92 buyers. And at that time, everyone in that 2-year-old crop was struggling to like break 80. And he like threw up this massive number. And I was like, who is this Antonio Sanyo horse that is down in Gulfstream Park? And then he goes and wires the field to the Mucho Macho Man. And I'm like, this is my ace. And then he blows the break at the Holy Bull, but ends up making this frantic charge, not all that dissimilar from the Mischief horse that we just saw at Remington Park. I'm blanking on his name entirely. Colin will
Mischief?
probably, yes, Giant Mischief. Thank you. And and so it then ends up winning the Fountain of Youth. He was my Derby horse all the way. He ran a really strong fourth. He's a workman's horse. He shows up everywhere. He runs hard. He gives his best. I'm a sucker for this horse. I will justify betting on him in almost every single race, even though my head is like telling me don't. But I don't know. There's something about that horse that I really like. I lived in Florida for 7 years, so I think I do have a natural affinity for some of these Florida horses, maybe more so than other areas of the country. But simplification, that was my guy. And I will say my girl is Spenderella, who the Grand Motion horse, who I just think is really, really special. And she unfortunately had to go to the bench for a little bit at the end of this year. But I think she is the class of what will be the 4-year-old filly and mare turf crop next year. And I just can't wait to watch Graham put her out there and have her run, because I think she's as good. She can go up against the Europeans better than any other American turf horse we have, I think, next year. So I'm really excited for her.
So earmark that one. So El Hombre, let's go to you next then. Who did you have as favorite horse?
Well, we checked in on Malathot from the Distaff Breeders' Cup,
Obviously.
and she just had a monster season, the whole season for 2022. Great year for Malathot. And for the boys, I struggled with I had Wade Abadio earlier in the year.
Yes.
We talked about Florida. I
Yeah.
loved that horse.
Yeah.
And I
Pretty
like that
horse
horse.
too.
Yeah, I love that horse going in all the way through the Derby stretch, the preps. And then in the Derby, I thought the horse had a chance, fell short. Hasn't really looked the same since then. I don't know what's going on for the future with that horse, but I ended up on Epicenter.
He's got to get back to Gulfstream, so watch out in Pegasus.
Yeah. He's definitely at home at Gulfstream for sure.
Our friend Vinny always said that those Saffy horses run way better at Gulfstream than anywhere else. He always had a gripe about how Saffy ships out to places like New York.
He's not wrong.
Not wrong.
We've seen
Saffy's
it.
been getting better.
I thought that horse might be able to overcome that.
Yeah.
But I did end up on Epicenter for the boys because that horse was just by far the most steady of the crop of 3-year-olds this year, and he was just fun to watch. He never really disappointed. There was a couple that I thought he was going to win and he didn't, but he at least ran second or third and everything.
Okay. So, Colin, I'll go to you last. I'm going to go straight to myself because I can. I went with Katoden and Beverly Park. I didn't pick male, female. I just picked a couple horses that I really liked this year. So Katoden, because some of the biggest winners that we picked that Trust the Profits, at least through my formula metrics, and the biggest trifecta I hit this year was with Katoden. I think we had 2 big wins with him. We also had a horse tourneys win with him at his last race at Kentucky Downs that we cashed in on for that, and the Audubon Stakes with Katoden earlier. I think that was in June in Churchill Downs. So that was my top horse. And then Beverly Park. Love mentioning Beverly Park. These are the horses I love. When we first started Trust the Profits, we were always talking about Frost or Frippery, just the horse that goes out, not necessarily a stakes horse, right? FOF. The horse that just goes out there and wins, and just goes out there either every 2 weeks, every month, and just wins. Beverly Park, 29 races this year with 14 wins. I forget how many places and shows, but I feel like every week somewhere there's Beverly Park. El Hombre, what were you saying?
No, I was just saying, just like Rated R Superstar, that the old guys going out there and representing.
Yeah.
It's fun, man.
The workhorse.
Yep.
So, Colin, I'm going to hand it off to you because I think yours is going to make a nice segue into our next topic as well. Go ahead with your favorite of 2022.
Well, I figured I'd save that one for the next topic because I didn't want to talk about him twice. But people know my affinity for Epicenter, so I need to do a little save myself here about my pick last week, and I'm going to go with Barber. I'm going to go with Barber Road because this is the horse that just and I had trouble with this question you guys put out. It's like you think this would be the easiest one, and I started looking. I'm like, having trouble picking which one it would be. And Barber Road ended up sort of kind of being that one that he's just a trier. He's always plodding along. I've always had an affinity for closers. That's been my weakness. I'm getting better at it, but for the longest time I was just like, well, who's the closer? Give me the closer, which is why like Zenyatta was the hero of the world to me. And Barber Road is that type of running style where you fall behind late. He had a win over Churchill in November of the year before the Derby. He won at 6 furlongs, and he won at 6.5 mile in the 16th. And then he just kind of kept getting seconds, and his price was always nice. You can never say he didn't really have a good price until I went and picked him in his last race and thought for sure that he would clean up at an allowance race at Oaklawn. But hopefully it was just he needs a little time off the layoff. I think he didn't run terrible, and hopefully he comes back next time. So Barber Road would be the one that kind of stole my heart. After Epicenter.
Yeah,
I'm with you. You were the only one that was. It should be noted that Colin was the only one on Barber Road last week.
Apparently not, because Barber Road got bet down to heck last week. So there were a lot of people on Barber Road. Out of us 4, yes, but
it was all me. It was all me.
Colin's moving the line at Oaklawn.
Colin's got that big money influence now.
Yeah, like my kids got cold for Christmas because of Barber Road in the line.
Absolutely. No, Barber Road did, like you said. One of you guys mentioned he was a try-hard. He was, man. He was like every Derby prep race he was in. He was like 10-1 or higher, and
he was like, always in the conversation.
I guess I got to throw Barber Road in the trifecta.
Yeah,
and he was
like
always
reluctantly, but then he would answer.
And he would always
the Belmont. That was a disappointing one.
Yeah, because he always would be making this late charge, and you said the assumption was, we'll just give him more distance, give him more distance, give him more distance, and it's like, no, that's just, it seems to be like his running style. He just doesn't quite get there. Like, I mean, and so but hey, I love horses like that, Colin. So you're in good company here, at least.
Yeah, I was a big Mo Donegal fan.
Steeplechase for Barber Road.
Same type of horse, Mo Donegal, except Mo Donegal ended up getting the.
He ended up winning a few. Yeah.
But last thing on Colin's pick there, his favorite Barber Road, like that horse, it did seem like you said, as far as closers went, he was amongst the top couple best closers in that crop this year. He just was always that short.
Yeah,
people forget he finished 6th in the Derby. It wasn't.
Yeah, he finished well.
And everybody putting together some sort of trifecta box looked deep at Barber Road during the Derby and thought
you couldn't leave him out of a try box, a try key or anything. Nothing.
Yep.
All right, Colin, I am going to toss this to you for the Eclipse debate. Top 3-year-old. I almost said 2-year-old there. Top 3-year-old for 2022. Go ahead and talk about yours.
Epicenter, back to you.
I can go ahead and say my piece in this real quick. Epicenter, and back to you.
I think the first thing that prior to Taba winning, I was, this is Epicenter's, it's wrapped up. I can make the argument for Taba now, and I think Sterling put out a tweet. Say what you will about him, but he said, like, if you're not at least thinking about Taba now, you're probably an Epicenter Yahoo, which is probably me. But even me can step back and say, you know what? First thing you want to look at is wins. They both had 4 wins, right? But what I look at, and what makes it hard for me to really move off of Epicenter, is look at that last line of his finishes. First, second, first, second, first, 6th on his very first race out.
Right.
People want to talk about the grade 1s and grade 2s and what races. I mean, he's in the conversation because he ran in the best races, and that is the finishing of his races. Right. 1-1, 2-2, 1-1, 2-1-1. That's the Travers, the Jim Dandy, the Preakness, the Kentucky Derby, the Louisiana Derby. I mean, what else do you want to put on there? I could even, I know where Matt's going with this, and I can listen to it. I can listen to the conversation. And to me, the Eclipse Award is just, I don't really, this is the most I've ever talked about it with anybody, because I don't know. It doesn't get the juices flowing for me. It's fun to talk about.
Me neither.
But people talking about, like, your boy Trusty put Rich Strike as the Eclipse winner for 3-year-olds because it was a great story. And, to me, it's like the baseball writers of America have ruined all of these little awards in all sports because they put on these people and you're like, what? And then they leave people off. Yeah. And it's like, well, how did someone not vote for Pedro Martinez as Hall of Fame? So
because he's a Red Sox.
See, Colin, this is why I put you first in this category, because I knew you would make the argument for El Hombre and I, because I think we're both in the same. We're both in agreement that this is Epicenter all the way. Yeah. I don't think the door is even open for Rich Strike. I know Rich Strike won the Derby, beat Epicenter by a length, whatever it was. But when you talk about consistency,
Rich Strike has one win.
It's all Epicenter. It's all Epicenter. First second.
One win.
So my argument is simply, first of all, I love Epicenter, and Epicenter, if I had a vote, would get my vote. But I think entertaining the argument for modern games is an interesting argument to make. And if nothing else, it shows the flaw in the Eclipse Awards, which is that any horse that runs at least once in North America is eligible for the award. Mm-hmm. And that brings in now all these Breeders' Cup shooters that come over and just crush us on the turf. Yeah. And you realize, like, oh, they're playing a whole other game over there. Like, we're in the AAA league in the turf, and that's the major leagues over there.
Yeah.
And modern games, I think, because of that horse's high profile, because of the debacle last year at the Breeders' Cup at Del Mar, running for prize money only.
Yeah, we remember that one well.
I think a lot of people don't even realize he's 3 years old. I think people think he's older than he is. Like, he is a 3-year-old.
I completely forgot until I saw you put it here. Yeah, because I remember that from last year, and I was putting it in a different race. Yeah.
No, it happens. And so this horse came over. He came over twice. He crushed the Woodbine Mile and just obliterated that field. And then he came back over and won the Breeders' Cup Mile. And it's like, okay, like, I mean, and then over in Europe, he's won Group 1 races over there as well. And he's been running against monsters who are older, like Baid. And so, and I think, some people will say he doesn't run the classic distance. He runs a mile. And I guess my retort to that is, I think of the Eclipse Awards as the best horse, not the best horse running of the longest distance. Like, if we just want to give it to marathoners, I mean, why don't we give it to like Aubon or something like that, who just runs like 2 miles? Like, I mean, what's the point of like, why is this 1.25 miles the classic cutoff? Like, oh,
and to
they
take
don't
a
run
step
that.
further, what you're
And
saying
so,
right there is, why don't
yeah.
they just add dirt into the name too? Because
because
in the U.S. nobody really values
yeah,
turf racing the same
not
way
the
they
same
do.
way, right?
not the same way. And so, like I said,
I'm guilty of that. I just got hardcore into turf racing in the last couple of years, to be honest with you,
Yeah.
because it was always like I think for most American, like especially fringe bettors or fans that are new in the last few years, it's all about the Triple Crown and Breeders' Cup. And well, we'll kind of get to the Breeders' Cup. The turf racing people just don't get excited about in the U.S., which sucks because now the more I dig into turf racing, the more I like it more than dirt racing.
Yep.
I mean,
but
and I think that's the case with a lot of people once you jump in, because there's a lot. Tactically, it's more fun to watch.
Oh yeah, much.
And it's a worldwide.
It's bigger fields. It's worldwide. I think turf racing is the future of the sport in a lot of ways. But but I do think ultimately Epicenter is going to take this one home. And this is, Colin, like you, this is the only Eclipse Award category that is even worth debating, because everything else is kind of a slam dunk, I think, for all the other areas. But this one, just because this was such a muddled 3-year-old crop, and there were, they kind of took turns winning different races at different times, and it ended up just becoming a little bit of a hot button topic of and it just comes down to personal preference in a lot of these cases. But I do think the consistency of Epicenter is just incredible.
Okay. So let's move off this topic. We also have best/worst bets and predictions of the year. El Hombre, I'm going to toss it to you since you had the least to say on Epicenter last time around.
Yeah, best. I felt like the Forte beating Cave Rock, because I can't tell you how much going into the Breeders' Cup the week leading up. A lot of people trying to build pick 4 and pick 5 tickets in the Breeders' Cup, which, first things first, I would never bet a pick 4 or pick 5 on Breeders' Cup day.
Yeah.
Unless you got, $500 to build a ticket with.
Yeah. If you're giving free money, have
deep.
fun.
The fields are too deep. It's not economical unless you got a ton of money to do it. But for me, but my point
Especially
is
with
everybody
juveniles.
was picking Cave Rock as a lockdown single, and I'm sitting here going, are you guys effing crazy?
Right.
I didn't see it. It wasn't in the numbers for me. He was better on paper than Forte, but by like fractions of a percentage point.
Yeah.
And I liked that Forte battle that you mentioned with Loggins earlier.
Mm-hmm.
That was that showed he had heart to win, not just to be, because like you said, that was a stretch battle. That was an epic stretch battle. I mean, they fought back and forth. It wasn't like Colin said, he passed him, and it was like the announcer even kind of gave up on Loggins. Loggins fights back, and then Forte fights back again. And when you see that, when you see that re-break, that generally shows me that the horse has a ton of heart. I liked him for that reason a little bit better than K-Rock, and that race paid a ton, and that got my weekend started the right way for sure, because I hit that exacta. We had it boxed. Don't get me wrong. I didn't bet it straight because I did think K-Rock definitely had a shot to win, so I boxed those two.
They were so close.
But I definitely didn't see the single love. Everybody, we can single Cave Rock. I'm like, I didn't like singling Cave Rock at all there. So
I'm with you 100%
that was
on that
probably
one.
the best decision of the year for me, betting wise. Worst early voting in the Preakness. Didn't give the horse any respect. Liked him very early on in the prep Triple Crown prep season. Early voting looked good at times, but definitely didn't think he could win the Preakness over Epicenter, who we've talked about at length.
Right.
And Rich Strike, some of the others that were in that race, but early voting beat me and proved me wrong, and that was a big error. He wasn't even in my top 3 or 4 in that race. So,
okay.
But
Matthew?
remember that the Trust the Profits viewers tuned into the case against Cave Rock, so we saved them, right?
Yes,
absolutely.
We also they tuned into the case against Nest, and she lost. The case against Jackie's Warrior, he lost. I was the only one.
We got to run that back.
Yeah,
that was a good series.
I'm the only one who was a loser. I made the case against Flightline, and there is no case against Flightline.
Yeah, but you were a loser on that.
I knew I was a loser. I knew I was a loser on that the whole time. But I fortunately did have some winners this year, and I will go back to the Breeders' Cup because that was really a culmination of, and El Hombre mentioned this, like the last 6-7 months of paying attention to European racing. And so the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint and then the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, both of those were huge hits for me. I spotted these Euros early. Even the Euros that were at a bigger price in the Juvenile Turf Sprint, I really liked up top. So I hit that exacta.
Yep.
That was really big in that first race, which is always a great way to kick off Breeders' Cup weekend. I remember standing next to Sarah El Badoui, who was at Horse Racing Nation at the time. And I looked at her, I go, I'm 1 for 1. And she just goes, well, you should stop now. And I was like, I might. And so,
it was what was that, like 8 or 10 to 1 price on that?
Yeah, it was an 8-to-1 horse that won, and it was with a 12-to-1 underneath. And so it was great. And then really the big one for me was the Juvenile Turf. I called it, and the most important was I called the trifecta there with Nagarok at 39-to-1 underneath, and that trifecta paid off $360 for a $1 trifecta bet. So that was easily my best bet. My worst bet was the Belmont. I did not like Mo Donegal at all. I did not like Skippy Longstocking. I did not like Nest. I didn't like anybody who finished in the top 3 in that race. I liked horses like Creative Minister and We the People because I'm an idiot. And so I definitely really stepped on it in the Belmont that day. That was not one of my better days in terms of just thinking through how that race was going to shape up and kind of what I thought of those horses at that time and kind of where everybody was coming in at. So, for that, as many highs as we have, sometimes we have some lows, and you gotta always own up to that.
Yep. And Colin?
Well, my best bet made me feel like $1 million when I showed up at Saratoga this year on the Friday. And Matt was supposed to be there. He's supposed to meet me there.
I know it was.
He called out, right? But I had been doing some shows with Vinny. I was new to this and new to the people around that we were kind of talking with. So Vinny shows up on race 4 on the first day. And I said, hey, Vinny, I'm alive in the pick 5 here. And I hit race 4. And then I hit race 5. And I hit the pick 5 for like $3,600. And I felt like $1 million. And I go over to the table. Vinny, it's Sarah. It's Sean Patrick Nolan. It's the racing dudes. And they're like, oh, so I'm like, wow, I feel like $1 million. And that was a great moment to kind of
That's awesome.
Be hanging and have that happen. That was the only pick 5 I hit all year, but I don't play many of them. Okay.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
either. Yeah. I've learned my lesson in those.
Congratulations on that. Yeah. I'm with
and at Saratoga, man, any given Saratoga day, a pick 5 is tough because there's usually
much respect
there's usually a bomb or two involved in every card there.
Yeah.
And my worst bet, I wanted to put this story to rest. It's the end of the year, and I don't ever want to think about this story again, but I'm gonna tell it one more time. I've probably told you guys, you probably heard this, but Kentucky Derby Day, I had a son born in 2021 and 2018, and I like to play their birthdays, and there's not many times you get 18. Hold on. I got to get this off this is my grief session. This is my last grief session of the year. There's not many times you get number 18 and number 21 in a field, right? So
that's true.
I'm playing my son's birthdays, and Mo Donegal, I believe, was either 1 or 2 he was the 1 in the Kentucky Derby, and my son was born 11/3/21. However, 21 wasn't in the race when I went to put on my bet. So I split up the 21. I split up the 21 and I did 11/3/21 as my exacta box for the Kentucky Derby. As you all know, number 21 was Rich Strike. Number 3 was Epicenter. It came 21/3, paying $2,000. If I boxed those 3, I always do $2 bet. That was $4,000. And that was my I will not let that down for a while.
I should have put you last.
Wow. The alarm, dude. If you got a dead pet or a kid's birthday or a wife or ex-girlfriend's wife,
pouring up for Banjo.
I should have put you last because I don't think I can top that. That was a tough one.
That's incredible. Every other story sucks now.
In terms of my best, exactly. In terms of my best, we mentioned it earlier. The case against. I did build a case against Jackie's Warrior in the BC Sprint.
Yes, you did.
And
with a direct call on this one,
with a direct call, I had Elite Power winning. I also did a pre-race where I had Elite Power winning. I even forgot what I called the preview race that I had Elite Power winning.
Field rundown.
And a lot of people thought I was crazy for picking against Jackie's Warrior. Alombre did.
I really did. I think Elite Power was one of the 2 or 3. Yeah, crazy. But Elite Power went off of 6 or 8 to 1 as well, like a great price.
Right.
In a field where really outside of Jackie's Warrior, it was either you were yay or nay on Jackie's Warrior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Jackie's Warrior is a freaking legend at this point. So I was like, there's my single. I just commented on how stupid I thought everybody was from the Cage Lock single. But my Saturday single was Jackie's Warrior and
the other ones. Yeah,
complete airball.
And the more I was digging into Jackie's Warrior for the case against, the more I dug into the video for the case against, the more I really started believing my own words. I thought, wow, I really do think Jackie's Warrior is going to get upset here because everything that we're building up on Jackie's Warrior's wins, not going to be there for this race at all in terms of the size of the field, getting pressure or not getting pressure. I thought there were a few horses, and I called one of the horses that was going to give Jackie's Warrior pressure.
Yeah.
Felt like that was my best of the year in terms of personal bets. I talked about the Audubon Stakes. That was a trifecta that I hit earlier in the year with Katoden. In terms of worst, as I was telling you guys before we did this, it's tough to come up with a worst because there are so many, right? They're all coming up at the same time. I think maybe my worst was Kentucky Oaks. I can't beat what Colin said. I'm sorry. Kentucky Oaks, I was all on Secret Oath, singling Secret Oath, Kathleen O. That was in my box. Nest was nowhere to be seen. Probably my biggest failure, at least in terms of some of the higher level races.
If you need to not feel bad about your bad bet, just reach out to Colin on Twitter and I'll be there to have a worse story than you.
Okay, and then the last thing we're going to bring up here is what we're looking forward to in the new year, 2023. Going to have to get used to saying that. Colin, let's go ahead and start with you. What are you looking forward to in 2023?
Well, I've really paying close attention to the Derby Trail this year, a lot more than I have in the past. Usually I jump in end of January, beginning of February. I've been watching
Trust the Prophets will do that to you. You'll start now.
I've been watching them since September, and I'm really feeling you're starting to see, even in the early side of it, some of the horses are continuing to win. You keep seeing the same names.
Yeah.
And it's going to be exciting to see what happens when Loggins returns, who actually is owned by 10 owners. Did you know that? That's pretty crazy. One other thing I wrote down, I did want to mention, I've never been to Belmont Park, surprisingly enough. I've been to Saratoga, Gulfstream, Suffolk Downs, obviously no longer. I think we forget Belmont Park's gone through this huge renovation where they've built a tunnel to go under the track to have open up the infield. So I'm excited for what that infield could open up opportunities to. You think of the parties at the Preakness and the concerts at Churchill. So I'm excited to see that with a little bit of reservation. Whenever there's changes to tracks, I always get concerned about horses' safety, and you've seen some of that. So I hope that whatever they're doing there, I trust in them, is right. And I hope that we don't have, what we had with Sinner and Eater a couple of years ago where there were so many breakdowns. But I'll be excited to see how that change, at the park changes kind of what the atmosphere is for Belmont Park Day. Hopefully it's not just a race that is exciting when you have someone going for the Triple Crown, and create some more excitement about that. How about you guys? How about you, Tom?
Yeah, what I'm looking forward to is El Hombre and I, starting in December, November, we already start to put together our top 20 Derby predictions, right? Our top 20 Derby power rankings. And I just know that every time we get to January and then February and then March and then April, there's just an influx of new ponies every week. Every week you learn about some pony that was not on your radar before that. I'm looking forward to finding out who's not on my radar now, who's going to arise as, this out of nowhere horse nobody saw coming, or maybe a few people in the know really knew was coming up. But I'm really excited to see who's not on my list now that's going to be there at the end of April before we start to put together our final rankings. Matthew DeSantis?
Yeah, sure. So for me, I already mentioned Spenderella. I mean, she's a horse that I'm really, really excited to watch next year and follow. I will say, I guess I'll be kind of the international flair among this group. I'm really excited for the kind of rivalry that's going to butt up of 2 3-year-olds, Taria and Meditate. Now, Meditate we saw come over and smash at the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. Just so impressive. Who is Taria? A lot of American audiences don't know. Taria is the horse that absolutely obliterated Meditate in the race right before Meditate came over and crushed all of the Americans. And so Taria is this freak over there as well. And those two are going to be running against each other. I'm excited to see that rivalry emerge over there. I really hope to see Taria next year at Santa Anita. And then I also am excited for the Japanese Invasion Part 2. I think because we're going to have the Breeders' Cup out in California at Santa Anita next year, we're going to expect a large Japanese contingent again, like we had at Del Mar in 2021. And I'm really excited about that. I love watching Japanese racing. I love the way they're doing things over there, the way they're breeding, the way they're running the sport. I mean, we could learn a lot. Colin, your comments earlier about Heisa, I think we could learn a lot from what the Japanese are doing with horse racing in terms of safety, in terms of regulation, breeding, etc. So excited to see them come over. Obviously, they had the 2 big wins with Marche Lorraine and Love's Only You, and that was so thrilling. Would love to see something like that happen in 2023 at Santa Anita in the Breeders' Cup. So I'm definitely looking forward to that.
And El Hombre, you want to close us out 2023? What are you seeing?
Yeah, you guys kind of all touched on it a little bit, but just the deeper dives into Triple Crown prep season and Breeders' Cup, because I felt like this Breeders' Cup that just passed us by was definitely, if not my best Breeders' Cup ever as far as betting went, second best at worst. And I've been doing Breeders' Cups for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was a coincidence or a fluke that happened. I just think that we all, as a group, have talked so much at length on all these races that we've just gotten smarter and a little bit better with not only who to bet on, but how to bet them.
Right.
And I really felt like I've gone in the right direction in that. So a deeper dive. We've always been kind of early on the Triple Crown, like Tom mentioned, with the top 25 power rankings and this and that leading up to the Kentucky Derby. But we started even earlier this year. Colin's been doing the Derby prep shows for 8 episodes or something already. I mean, we've already got it, and he's doing a good job looking into, who's even an honorable mention at this point, because again, like you said, Tom, you're going to see new horses emerge for weeks to come, months to come, that aren't even on anybody's radar yet, which is cool. But just the deeper dives earlier in the season than we've ever done before. I think it's going to pay off, because it used to be that at least in my case, I would know the top 5 or 10 horses coming into the Derby. Well, I think these 3 or 4 have a shot. And then there was always like a handful that I just didn't really know much about. And then the last couple of years, I knew pretty much the history on everybody in the Kentucky Derby before the race went off. And that's because we just talk about it a lot more. Yep. And we, follow the prep season a lot deeper. So that on the Triple Crown and Breeders' Cup trails, just deep dive and everything a lot more this year, which is beneficial for us individually, but also I think for the subscribers and the viewers too.
Right.
I'll give you 2, Tom, to throw in there. Tappett's Conquest is a horse to watch out for that maybe you not have on your radar. And there's a horse named Olivier, who is Flightline's full brother. Same father, same mother. So hasn't worked out a race yet, but throw that one in your virtual stable.
I feel like I've heard of that one before. Yeah. But I'll have to toss it on my stable. Thank you very much for that. Yes.
Wonder how much that one's going to be worth.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So as I started at the open of this, our mission was always to keep improving, keep getting better at predicting horse racing, and put those tools out there. And I'm looking forward to 2023, where we're going to build on what we did in 2022 and keep getting better at this and keep talking about it on YouTube, on our channel for everyone to see here, and keep putting out our picks to subscribers and various things like that. So guys, thank you again for a wonderful 2022, the best ever for Trust the Profits, but we're looking forward to even better things in 2023, I think. Cheers.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.